Summer is here and wet wading is the best way to keep cool. So you need comfortable clothes that can protect you from the sun and dry quickly when they get wet. They need to be durable enough to maneuver down the riverbank and comfortable enough to double haul out to that rising trout. Based in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Stio Apparel makes premium outdoor clothing. Technical performance, quality, and versatility are all hallmarks you'll find in every piece of apparel Stio makes. Be it intended for epic hikes to catch freestone trophy trout, with quieter moments floating on your favorite stillwater. Visit Stio.com and use code ERICSTIO for 20% off your first order. Welcome to the Deerstone Podcast. My name's Eric Leslie, and today I'm on location shooting with my new friend, Mike Pawlaski. He's got a huge itinerary of a resume that we need to go over. I don't normally like going super deep into people's origin stories because I think it can get a little pedantic talking about how their grandpappy gave them a fly rod when they were 3, but I think we need to in your case. I'll just go over a quick resume. So you played quarterback for Cal and did quite well. I think you had a pretty good season, 10-2.
10-2, number 7 in the country my senior year.
Awesome.
Got the Pac-10 back then, offensive player of the year. So pretty good year.
Okay, and then you were drafted in the NFL, played for Tampa Bay, right? And then after that, then you went on to play arena football.
So I went from the NFL in Tampa, by the way, which is where I got my love for tarpon.
Okay.
And then went to the CFL, Canadian Football League. So I played in Baltimore and Shreveport. And so that's the little light part in my resume because I kind of try to forget that. But played in the American teams in the Canadian Football League, and then went on to the Arena League, played for Albany, won a world championship in Albany, and then played in the XFL 1.0, the first time that came around.
Okay.
So I was what they call a journeyman back in my football days.
All right. Well, so sports has been a major part of your life. Where do the outdoor side of things come in?
It is a great story, and not to get too deep in the backstory. My dad, when my brother was born, Eric. When he was born, my dad thought it is a dad's job to teach his kid how to fish. My dad never learned how to fish when he was a kid. And so he made it his mission to learn how to fish. And so he learned how to fish so he could teach his sons how to fish. My brother hated it, couldn't care less about fishing, like wasn't his jam. He was all about sports. I took to it like I was built for it. Started fishing when I was a baby. There's pictures of me in diapers, out there. But growing up, like the more I could learn, I was reading Field and Stream. I was reading Taps Tips. I was like all that stuff.
Awesome. Trying
to learn anything about it. At 10 years old, I saw a dude waving a stick in a river, Rush Creek over on the east side in the Sierras, coming off of Silver Lake. And I'm like, what is that? And I was totally transfixed. And so I'm watching him catch fish after fish after fish. To fish that were rising, which were fish that I could never catch, right? I was throwing like panther martins and meps and rooster tails and all that stuff at that point because I wanted more active fishing. But I could never catch those rising. I couldn't figure it out, right? And all of a sudden, he's catching all these rising fish. I'm like, oh, I gotta do this. And to the guy's credit, he looks up at me. He's like, do you want to try this?
Wow, that's really cool.
Almost a 10-year-old kid sitting there, and at that point, my dad had kind of like. You could back then go, just go fish, just go away, right? And so he'd let me just roam the stream. So I'm like, do I? Yeah, like totally. So I walk out there. I think I was wearing my old OP shorts and, like some kind of athletic shoe. And I walk out to him and he's like, here's how you do it. 10-2, the whole classic quick fly fishing technique teaching tip.
Mm-hmm.
And I make a couple casts, he corrects me on a couple things, and then I stroke one, put it out there, fish grabs it, set the hook, and I am done. I am baked. I am a fly fisherman forever. Like, I just watched this fish eat my fly, and I was so geeked out about it. And, thanked the guy profusely. It was just this amazing opportunity. And I literally sprinted 2 miles back to our campsite. I'm like, Dad, we need to get this fly rod. I had that fly fishing. And by the time I slowed down and he figured it out, he's like, oh, okay, fly fishing, got it. And so for my 10th birthday, I got home and he and my mom bought me a fly fishing setup, the old Berkeley Fire Stick, 7-weight fly rod and Pfluger Medalist fly reel, and the most basic set you could get. And I cast and cast and cast and cast and cast, and I wore up my first fly line before I ever got to the water.
Wow.
Casting in the backyard. So by the time I was but actually I started fishing, I was throwing 60 feet clean, no problem.
Wow. I mean, most people, it's the opposite. I mean, they get on the water, they flail for months and months until they get serious and get maybe a or a casting lesson or something. But I mean, just thinking back to that fisherman you just happened to run into, that's a huge gift because like in this sport, there's a lot of gatekeepers, there's a lot of elitism. They see some kid, walking up in ball shorts, like, oh, heck with him, give you that gift of show you a few pointers and get you on that first fish. That's amazing.
And that is like the most fantastic point ever. That is, to me, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher by nature. I think there's a kind of whole circuit that you run as a fisherman. You start off, you're a newbie, you don't know anything, super cool, but so difficult because you know nothing. And then you start to pick up a little bit, you have a little bit of success and you're starting to feel good. And then you hit a point where you're like, okay, I'm competent at this. I'm a competent fisherman. And then you either kind of stay there, which maybe most people do, right? Kind of stay there because they don't get enough exposure to it. Or you decide, I'm going to push through that. And then you learn everything you can and you start doing it and you get exposure to guides and people who are doing it and like really good anglers, really good fishermen. And then you kind of push through the other side. I was really fortunate enough. I used to fish on the east side every summer. I'd fish around the house all the time. I was really fortunate with my athletic career when I was in my 20s so I'd already been fly fishing for 10 years. I was pretty decent, but I got a lot of guides and a lot of dudes who really knew what they were doing. And so I pushed through that and then of course started the show when I got done playing, and we'll talk about the show a little bit, but I got around a lot of really, really good fishermen.
That's huge.
And that's huge. Yeah. Like none of it is intuitive. It all has to be learned until it becomes intuitive. And so being able to push through it and get to that other side of fishing was really big. And I think that, I love giving back now to get where I started. Don't mind my ADD as I ramble. But to get back where we started, I love giving back now. If you ever see me on a trout stream, anybody out there, if you ever see me on trout stream and you can't figure out what they're eating, come ask. I will give you bugs. I will help you out. I will show you whatever you want to know. And I'll probably spend the rest of the day coaching you. Like, I just love teaching people how to fish because it's a lifelong gift.
It's awesome.
The dude gave it to me when I was 9.5. And I love giving it back to as many people as I can.
So cool. Well, that leads me back to how we connected in the first place. Because, as a YouTuber, I like to consume other people's content just to see what's going on. And that's how I found you. And I'm like, what is this? This is like a really professionally produced show. It looks a little older, but he's giving some narration. He's basically repurposing a show. And then I looked you up. And you've had this whole show on the Outdoor Channel for about 5 or 6 seasons. Is that right?
So Familiar Waters we shot for 15 years.
Oh, okay.
So I had a fly fishing show produced for 15 years. On the air, I think for 14 of them.
Okay.
And so there was some digital content out the backside, a bunch of digital stuff around it. And then as I was doing that, we started shooting hunting stuff too. We did Familiar Waters. I did a show called Fall Flight, which was a bird hunting show. I did a show called Gridiron Outdoors, which was another hunting show with former NFL players. I would bring other football players on. And so we do all that. And so it all kind of crossed over. It became hunting because Outdoor Channel wanted more hunting because there was more money in it from sponsors. And so that's the way that they wanted to go with it. They pushed it that direction. But if it's up to me, I'd have been doing fly fishing the whole time. Because the places are way nicer. Like I'm going to Key West. I'm going to Guatemala. I'm going to New Zealand. And I did that for hunting too. But I'm going to New Zealand in the summer. Like you're hunting in the fall and the weather can be dicey. Yeah. Whereas if you're hunting or if you're fishing, you're generally fishing in the summer or you're fishing somewhere nice in the winter.
For sure. So you've been probably fishing the whole time playing ball, right? So when you were done playing football, you went all in on these outdoor sports, correct?
So I did it the whole time.
Just recreationally. Right?
Well, and I guided. Okay. So in my off season as I played, I was also guiding, and you guys at home probably hear the leaf blower in the backyard. We're in my backyard, and it's always perfect timing. The leaf blower comes on, so apologies for that. But I was guiding while I was playing, and so I loved it. I was kind of in between from the NFL to the CFL and trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I was going to go to law school, and I was going to, there was a million opportunities out there for me, but I wasn't dialed into it. And I'm like, I'll just guide. And so I used to guide on the Upper Sac, over on the east side, on the McCloud, all of our Northern California rivers, the Klamath, a little bit on the Stan out here, a little bit on Puda Creek.
Okay.
But I would, so take guys out, go fish with them. And I kind of found my love for teaching people how to fish there. and cut my teeth on a lot of the stuff, a lot of the techniques as well. I was doing it and I was good enough to guide, but I wasn't kind of the angler I would become. And so learning from everyday use and seeing how fish react and water types change and flows affect fish, like all those things, being a guide is so amazing in terms of learning what you need to do, because now you need to produce when you're on the water, right? You need to get people on the fish.
For sure.
And show them a good time at the same time. So it's kind of that entertainment industry, it's the hosting industry, and it's the fishing industry all at the same time.
Yeah, I was thinking, I've heard someone say, oh, I've been fishing this river for years, and then you start drilling in and maybe 3 or 4 times that year, but when you're guiding 4 or 5 days on the water every week, I mean, you really learn that river.
Same river, right? And so that's a big deal. You got to be on the water all the time, because rivers change all the time.
True.
Like that's the big thing about fly fishing. One thing one nugget, if anybody takes away from this from talking to me, is that sometimes the fish win too. Like, we're always trying to find an answer for this, and most of the time there's an answer. But the fish win and environments change and things happen, and like, it's not always what you're doing. We always think it's what we're doing. And anglers always think that way.
Right.
And it's the bug, it's almost never the bug. It is literally, so if you're at home, it's almost never the bug. Like, it's if you've got a mayfly that's in the right size range and they're eating mayflies in that size range, it's not the bug. It can be, it can be a bar's emerger, it can be a micro may, it can be a PT, it doesn't matter. It's not the bug. It's presentation, it's drift, it's environment, it's sun penetration, it's turbidity of the water, it's all these things. And that's the fun part too, is the puzzle that you get to figure out. But yeah, so being on the water, on the same piece of water time and time again, is really, it's great in education for that piece of water and for fishing overall.
Let's move into where you're at today. So talking about, so that was the past, you guided all those years, and I've connected with you on your YouTube channel. That's all fairly new, at least the fly fishing side. So you do a lot of sports commentating on your other YouTube channel, Elite Athletes TV?
Yeah, Elite Athletes TV. And so I train quarterbacks, as a 11-year pro quarterback, former college player. I coach high school around here for football as well. I love the sport. I will never stop, cool. Loving football. It was just fantastic. What I tell people all the time, I had the greatest job I'm ever going to have. I was a professional quarterback. I got paid to play football, to play a kid's game. It's awesome, right? And so I love giving that back to kids as well and training them properly. And so, but we do that with Elite Athletes TV, because there's kids, like, if there's a quarterback here who wants to get coached, they can reach out to me. I can coach them in person. We're there. But there's kids in Cornfield, Iowa, or East Icicle, Minnesota, that
Red Bluff, California, that don't necessarily have access to, guys that have played at that level. Although Red Bluff has Gail Gilbert, another Cal guy who's a stud. Saying, for cornerbacks. I don't know that he coaches up there, but he's a stud. All right.
But they don't have access to that kind of stuff. And so I want to give them quality content that they can kind of self-coach, self-train at home. And so we developed Elite Athletes TV, and just from the nature of being an ex-pro, playing at Cal, where we have a lot of great athletes, I started working with former Olympians, future NFL Hall of Famers. Hardy Nickerson's a linebacker who does stuff with us. Dan O'Brien's a 3-time world record holder and a gold medalist in the decathlon. He's working with us teaching speed. Our strength and conditioning coach was a teammate of mine in the Arena Football League. He's one of the best human performance guys in the world.
So cool.
And so I have access, and I'm like, let's do this. And they all love to coach and give back too. And so they realized there's a huge need for kids out there that don't get this access. So started doing that. And then coaching there, I'm like, this is great. I love doing this. I'm getting great feedback from people. Why can't I do this with fly fishing too? Like, I can reach more people. The internet is amazing. It's made us, it's given us the ability to reach a ton of people with those interests. And so I've taken my fly fishing stuff from Familiar Waters, and now, as you said, repurposed it to teach more with it. Like, here's how we're doing it. Here's why it's happening. Here's what you should be thinking. Like, I try to give like the telestrator type of style to it of, here's why this is working. Here's how you do it. Because a lot of that learning, I had to go scrounge up in the magazines when I was a kid. And as you pointed out, this sport can be super elitist. There can be like huge barriers to entry, just financially, right? But I want a kid who's going to pick up a starter package from Orvis or SA or whatever, Reddington, to be able to go out and fish with some knowledge and catch a couple fish.
100%.
And turn that switch. And I mean, once you dial it in and turn that switch, you're going to find it. but to give them some tools so they can hit the water and actually catch fish right away.
100%. I mean, that's one thing that made your channel stand out to me is how you would like pop into you would like take a pause from whatever you're doing on the river and say, this is what's going on, and explain it, like you said, like it was a play in a football game. So that's very unique. No one else in the fly fishing scene is doing that. So definitely go check out his show. Check it out in the notes. It'll be in there for sure. And there's a lot of great content. I know you're publishing a lot of videos every day or weekly.
We've got 15 years, right?
Content
to work through. And it's funny because when we started, age myself a little bit, right? It's like tape doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
Everything's digital now. And so I have hundreds of reels of tape that I'm about to transfer over to digital. And so there's some really good, it'll be throwback stuff. I say throwback. Fly fishing hasn't changed that much in 20 years. The competition aspect of it, right? The international fly fishing stuff has changed some stuff. And we should get into that, by the way.
Okay.
Because it's an interesting take. I fish with a lot of those guys. But although it's changed fly fishing some, like the basics of what fish do when they eat and how you have to approach it has not changed at all.
For sure.
And so there's hype around it, but all that stuff that we have in the can is all really good, teachable stuff for fly fishing, and that's what I love doing. Like as much as I can with what we have, I love teaching.
For sure. And I think you've had the unique opportunity of getting to fish so many waters.
Yes.
Salt, fresh, everything, probably still water. I haven't seen any of that yet. But do you feel like that breadth of experience has really kind of solidified sort of your ability to share and teach? I mean, to sort of spread that knowledge out, because not many people, I mean, even myself, I travel a little bit, but it's mostly in the North State area. I don't have any saltwater experience, so
right.
I appreciate those kind of perspectives.
Absolutely. So I have vowed to be a lifelong learner, right? I understand that I am always learning. I want to go out and teach people because I've had the access to these things, but I'm also learning all the time. One of the things that I learned from doing this, from fishing, from freshwater to saltwater to still water to move, like there's certain things that key the predatory instinct in fish, period. End of discussion. Like they're going to eat or they're not going to eat. And it's always a go, no go decision for fish, period. And so what I started doing is literally taking some of the stuff from salt to fresh and some of the stuff from freshwater to salt in terms of, I'll give you a good example.
Yeah.
We're fishing, this is from salt to salt, but we're fishing redfish in South Carolina. It's a tough day. We've got dolphins that are just hammering on redfish, so they're super spooky. And we're trying to throw, marsh critters and, redfish crack and all this stuff that's kind of the standard go-to redfish fly. And if anybody who's ever fished redfish, it's super blingy flies. They're like super shiny, super flashy, and they're really loud. Well, these fish are kind of chill, and we catch them on a seam, and there's a mud seam, it's a rip like you would fish for stripers in California, and they're not eating what we're throwing at them. I'm like, hold on. And I whip out my bonefish box, and I pull out a small shrimp pattern. And I took from bonefish, go smaller, go subtle, put it on my redfish rod, and immediately knocked it out there and smoked a 10-pound redfish. And so it's being able to transfer the knowledge that you pick up in one place to another. We were fishing, I'd been fishing tarpon for years, and I was down doing a show on Lee's Ferry. And our guide was all about throwing woolly buggers.
Okay.
And he only had a certain strip technique that he was using. And I love the guy. Guy's fantastic. But I'm like, let's try something different. Learn this with tarpon. And I started with the two-handed strip, and I switched out baits, and immediately, boom, we started hammering fish because I changed the retrieve style, right? We went from doing the straight woolly bugger, which is maybe a leech, maybe a crawdad, like who knows,
right?
Into an injured bait fish, a little fleeing bait fish deal, and the trout reacted. And so being able to take those things and transfer them over, I went to the Everglades, and we're fishing. It was a great story. We're down there, and we get to Florida. It's been off the chain. I mean, the fishing has been fantastic. And we get a freezing rain and a 40-degree temperature drop.
Okay.
Anybody who knows anything in Florida, okay. Anybody who knows anything about tarpon know that as wonderful as they are to catch, they are just moody little bitchy fish when the weather changes. And so weather changes, tarpon go to the channels, they are not doing anything. They are locked down. And we can't figure out how to scrape up a fish. Redfish don't like it. Trout don't like it. Tarpon don't like it. Snook don't like it. I mean, nothing down there wants to eat.
Okay.
And I said, we need to figure out, A, where these fish are holed up in the channels, and how do we get to them? So what do? I pull out a shooting head, and I start swinging for tarpon.
You're just using currents?
Yeah, well, just like you would swing for steelhead.
Okay.
You know, just like you would swing for trout, swing streamers.
Like when the tides are moving in and out?
We get on top of a channel. I'm gonna shoot this, throw a shooting head across with like 600 grain or something, so it's gonna sink pretty quick. Cast it across, drop it down, swing out the back, and strip. And if you got it just right, I was catching trout, I was catching tarpon, like I was catching other stuff.
So cool.
Just using techniques that I learned steelheading for saltwater now. And so all that stuff crosses over, and it's cool to get the experience doing all these things so that now you have more bullets, right, in the barrel. I can throw this at them, I can try this. It's just that exposure of doing different things that you can now utilize when you hit the field.
For sure. And I think in the sport, people tend to get boxed into certain techniques, and they'll, there's a hatch coming off, I'm going to throw a caddis or whatever, and they don't think maybe dry dropper or whatever it might be, whatever technique they're focused in on, they don't always want to try different things. And I think that kind of goes into some of your friends who are Team USA fly fishermen. Tightlining, which I do a lot of, Euro nymphing craze is so popular, but you say, things are still the same, and the fish still eat the same way as they used to. Let's talk about that and like how that's. Well, did you compete?
No, I did not compete. I never competed. I was never like.
Because I know a lot of people hate the whole competition scene in general. I mean, there's.
Oh, I don't hate it. I think it's fantastic. I'm all for competing. Like, I'm a former pro athlete. Compete at everything. I'll compete. You and I can go at beer pong right now if you want. Like, I will compete at everything. So I'm good with it. I have no problem with it, and I think it advances the sport as long as it's done properly. I think they're doing it properly. Pete Erickson, who was captain of Team USA Fly Fishing, is a really good friend of mine. Love the dude. Fantastic. And he's one of the best anglers in the world, period. He's fishing in the Masters Championship in Italy in July. So he's, really phenomenal angler. And he used to say all the time, like, because he's a guide too, he guides all through, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. He's like, oh yeah, there's some really good guys out there, like really good, way better than me. I'm like, dude, you're like as good as they get. And so the humbleness of it,
right.
I love that. And he's always learning. And so the whole concept of competition fly fishing was set up, and I heard Pete say this, so this is not mine, but was set up to make it more difficult on the angler to kind of spare the resource, which is the fish.
Okay.
Right? They didn't want a bunch of really good anglers going in with the best techniques and just tearing up rivers. Because they would. These guys are really good. Pete tells a story about a time he had an Italian fisherman in his boat who was using like a woolly bugger for the point fly and 2 droppers off of it, and he was hammering 3 fish at a time in the really good. Okay. And so they tried to make it as difficult as possible, period, to catch fish for these guys to do it.
I've always wondered, because I always felt like some of the restrictions that the comp guys have are kind of arbitrary, like you can't use an indicator, or nothing attached to the fly line, or your leaders can only be 20 feet long.
Spare the resource, right? And they have to keep it all kind of on the same page too, right? Guys have to be, you have to have some rules, or else guys will be, coming out there with lime bombs, and it's just that fits the backside, right? But that in mind, the fact that the Euro craze took off, the concept originally was to make it harder to catch fish, right? And so what they did was, with the lead was a big thing, taking split shot off a leader. That was a huge one. And so they've made flies heavier, that sink faster, they get through the water column.
Tungsten beads instead of brass.
Exactly. And so, because that's what the fish are, right? And so the same thing for anybody who's nymphing with an indicator, or who's nymphing Euro style. I used to tightline nymph when I was
high sticking.
10, high sticking. That was Euro nymphing. Only there wasn't any Euro nymphing back then, right? And so the leader with the high vis tip, I used that when I was in my teens.
Okay.
So it's not really Czech nymphing per se. I mean, it is. They made it famous. And the Polish fly fishing team was awesome, so I claim that as my people. But these things have been around. And it's all about the same thing. It's how can you get your bugs in front of a feeding trout looking exactly like the naturals? Whether you're using an indicator, or whether you're using Tightline or Czech or Euro or Polish, whatever, how do I get my bug to look like a natural bug as it floats down in front of this feeding fish? Period.
Right.
And if it does, the trout's going to come over, he's going to mouth it. And if he likes the way it feels, he's going to hold it. If he doesn't, he's gonna go and on to the next thing, and you'll never know it.
Right. Yeah, I've seen some underwater footage of a fish just lightly mouthing and then spitting it out.
go
And it's
and
like,
tap it and
I'm
kick
just
out.
wondering, would I even have felt that?
Oh, you missed. I would venture a guess. I spent hours and hours and hours in a scuba suit,
Oh, really?
underwater, filming fish for our. We had a DVD called "The Naked Truth About Nymphs."
Okay.
That was my first foray into fly fishing production stuff. It's one of the things that got me my first fly fishing show.
Okay. Very cool.
And Orvis was great. Tom Rosenbauer, when Tom was younger. I don't claim to know him very well, but we're at Orvis at the fly show here at San Mateo. And I'm walking by the booth. We had just put this video out, and one of the Orvis guys from the booth grabs me and goes, "Hey, come here." And he pulls me over and he goes, "Hey, Tom, this is the guy." And Tom goes, "We want to buy your video." I'm like, "Oh, okay, great." Because we had literally quantified and put everything on film about how you effectively nymph fish and nymph and indicator fish. Like what I just said, this is what it all boils down to. When you get down to the basics, what is it? I want my bug in front of a trout looking like a natural. Period.
Right.
Dead drift, like all that. So we had quantified that in a video. And like that's the key. And so whether you're Euro nymphing, whether you're nymph and indicator fishing, you actually, to me, you put yourself at a disadvantage Euro nymphing.
Because of range or?
Well, range, you also have a lot more drag. You can separate yourself from dragging on an indicator. When you have a lot of line out, you either have to fish right at your feet, which is great, and everybody says fish right at your feet first. True. But I want to fish over there. And what if I want to fish over there? Can't do that if I'm Euro nymphing, right? Those guys wade and cover a lot of water. And
They compromise by going really light leaders, like 8 pounds, so
Right.
that they can pick it up, and even though it's a low
Exactly.
angle, they can still sort of get over there.
sort of get over there, and they kind of sort of get a clean drift. Maybe, and you can catch fish on the swing. And like, those guys are really, really, really good. Really good. Most guys don't get to practice that much. These guys are doing it all the time. When we were up in Utah just a couple months ago, I talked to Pete, and he's like, "Yeah, we're having a retreat. We're going to go down and fish the Provo and blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, they're whacking sow bugs, and they got the blue wing olives coming off at lunch." So he was all dialed in. I had just fished it. And he goes there the next day, and he's like, "Oh, we smoked him. It was great." So whether you're Euro nymphing or nymph and indicator fishing or high sticking or whatever you want to call it, getting back to the very basics. What are we doing? How? And if you think about that way as a fisherman, how are we getting there? To get our bug drifting like a natural, dead drift, or swinging in front of a fish, right? It's rising through water column. Whatever it is that the fish are keying into, that's what you're trying to figure out. And so, long story short and rambling answer, I love teaching that. I love talking to people about that. That's kind of what you learn. The more you're into it, the less detail it has to be. It's like, this is the end goal. What looks like the bug that they're eating? How do I get it in front of them? And how do I make it drag free? Those 3 things. If you get those 3 things right, you're going to catch fish.
At least you'll get hookups.
Yes. Yeah.
Landing fish, that's a whole other story.
Especially when you're filming by yourself. And I have to say this now, like watching you do your stuff, I love watching your stuff. It's awesome. It's like very real, which is really cool. It's all the waters that I fished in California, which is really cool. And it's to be able to do that, people at home don't understand how difficult that is. Like shooting yourself. I always have 2 camera guys with me, or at least 1 camera guy with me, who's catching the action, who's there for everything, who can push a button, and like you got to not just capturing it, but then editing afterwards. Like you must look at countless hours of footage.
I do.
You're like, oh, I have to watch all this. There's got to be a key to it. You timestamp something when something good happens, but then you have to have the whole experience, right?
Right.
And I love the drone shots that you added recently. Drone shots are awesome. Drones are great. We didn't have them when I started producing stuff.
Yeah.
Now that we have them, they're just fantastic.
Yeah. Well, even in my photography career, back in the day, I had an aerial gig, and it was before drones were widely available. So they hired me to fly in a helicopter, where now it's like, a $500 drone could have gotten the same shot that all that money was spent on.
I cannot tell you how much money I've spent on helicopters for our show.
Oh, yeah?
To capture that aerial feeling, right? But I can never be on the water and have the helicopter going at the same time, because we're there in the helicopter. And now with drones, it's like, it's a whole new world out there.
And they're so cheap, and even the cheap ones have really great cameras, so it's pretty cool. I agree. That's one of the things I'm trying to kind of expand. Like I'll usually get some shots for the intro, but I'd love to get some more actual fishing from the drone. But like I said, a one-man band, it's very difficult.
It's tough. I said, well, we'll have to go out and fish together, right? And I'll run the drone for you.
Yeah.
We'll catch some good stuff for you. We'll kind of work a little production together.
It's more just a matter of doing it in here, because a lot of them, they can track you. Like, you can just tell it to follow you, and you could even walk down a trail or whatever, and it should stay out of trouble without crashing itself. So
You should.
Well, there's some that can do some pretty amazing things. I don't know if you've seen some of the non-DJI ones. There's one based out of California called Skydio. It uses AI, and you can literally have a GPS beacon on you, and it'll follow a mountain biker down a single track.
Oh, no kidding.
Flying through and around trees. It's pretty crazy.
That's
It it flies itself. Anyway, filming yourself thing, we were going back to it being very difficult. I think a lot of people think I'm a much better fisherman than I am, because I'll condense a 4 to 6 hour day on the water down to 30 minutes. I mean, my videos are a little longer than I think most, but like you said, I try to keep it real. I mean, I try to show people
in the experience. I love when you were out fishing for you're fishing for trout, and all of a sudden you see a pot of steelhead. It's like, whoa! Like, I was waiting for you to come off the top of that rock, and I wanted to see the hookup, because the hookup was going to be a train wreck, but then trying to get off the top of that rock while hooked up was going to be epic television.
I just was hoping to get that hookup. I wasn't actually expecting to get it.
Get one to eat.
So I actually have an update for that story. So the fish hatchery that's based out of, well, it's Coleman. It's their sister one that's underneath the dam at Shasta Lake. They collect, spring run, well, all the runs of Chinook salmon there.
Right.
And I'm not sure what the reasoning is, but they normally release them back into the river to spawn like naturally. And so the river's really low. So they're actually transporting them into that creek to release them there. So those may have actually been Chinook salmon that were transplanted.
Yeah. Well, so that's what I figured. So when you saw it, in terms of timing, right? So the SAC had 3 different runs of fish. It had spring, winter, and summer fish that all came through for salmon, right? Or fall fish.
Right.
So I did a water policy documentary in California. So I learned kind of all about the SAC and everything else. So I thought maybe there's salmon because the timing is right. Right. You'll get summer fish here, steelhead-wise still, but we don't really have a spring steelhead run. And so, like, for them to be in this time of year, that would be super early.
Well, yeah, that's why I was shocked. I mean, the fish there were definitely a couple lightly colored ones that were in the 30-inch, probably 10-pound range. Yeah. So, I mean, those would be a pretty big steelhead for that system.
Yeah, that'd be a really big steelhead for that system.
I mean, even up there, drifting the lower Sac through Redding, most people don't even consider those steelhead, even though, you got to report them on your card.
Yeah. Well, anything, what is it, 19 inches, right? 18 inches?
I think
19?
16.
Okay, so anything over that is now a steelhead in California. So.
Right. Well, for an anadromous river.
Anything that touched the bay. So, absolutely.
That was definitely a shock. I mean, I was not expecting to see those in there. It was fun to try.
But that's always awesome. So I was fishing the Stanislaus out by Oakdale, and just below Tulloch, right? And so I'm out there fishing. This is back when I was playing, so way back when, like 96, 97.
Okay.
And I just had a day off. I'm gonna go fly fishing. I've got my 4-weight, right? Maybe catch a bunch of trout, a bunch. I say a bunch. Flat River, 6 or 8 is a bunch. And I'm fishing hard and knock it out there, hook something, and it runs, and it's going down the canyon. I'm like, holy smokes. And so I fight this thing. I'm crawling over rocks. Like, it is a total freak show with me running. And I ended up landing this thing. It's like a 24-inch steelhead. Wow. It is a gorgeous fish. And they get them that get up there. They just don't get very many of them.
Sure.
And so I'm like, there's no way it's a rainbow trout, not for that river.
Right.
It's a steelhead, and it's clean, and it's chrome, and it's beautiful. I'm like, this is awesome. So you get them, right? And those are like the great moments of fly fish. I still remember that. I've caught a bunch of fish. I still remember that fight, that fish, because it was kind of such a gift on that river that day.
100%. That's so cool. I mean, everybody's got those kind of, steelhead are special. I mean, this last winter was my first chance really trying to go after them, mainly in the Trinity. And I mean, those are, back to the whole, like, filming your thing yourself is very difficult. I mean, I got both of my 2 biggest ones from last season. I did not get them on camera just because of, mistakes made. Well,
and steelhead, right? They call it the fish of 1,000 casts for a reason.
I think I got lucky though. I got mine in maybe a couple hundred, but still, it's perfect dead drifts. I mean, you cannot and it got to be deep. Those pools, the runs they were in were really deep.
Yeah. People who are steelhead fishing at home, and I know you're just getting started, this is what I was talking about earlier. Sometimes the fish win, right? Steelhead, it's not about, I'm doing something wrong. Steelhead is all about finding where the fish are. Where are they today? What are they doing? Where are they in the system? You may be fishing sterile water. Like, you may not have any steelhead anywhere near you at some of these places that you fish. And so you got to figure out where they're at in the system first, right? Get good reports, good intel. I'm lucky that I fly fish for long enough that I get pretty good intel up there.
That's good.
But then once you figure out where they are, now where are they within that space? Are they hanging on the back of runs? Are they up feeding on flats? Are they in deep cuts? Are they in pools?
Are they even
like,
feeding?
Right. Well, yeah, and steelhead are just notoriously closed mouth. But like all of that stuff comes together. Steelhead fishing, boy, you want to get humbled. Go steelhead fishing a lot.
But it's so rewarding though when you do figure it out.
It's awesome. Yeah, just getting to eat, right? Just getting a steelhead to eat is like, yes, I got one, stuck him in the face, turned him. Awesome, love it. I mean, it's good stuff.
Do you think swinging flies is the pinnacle of steelheading? No?
I think, and here's where I kind of get away from all this, the fly fishing elitism. Whatever you like to do, whatever, you should do. Just do it. Like as long as it's ethical, right? And we're treating the fish right. We're improving the environment. We're improving the fishery. We're improving kind of the experience for other anglers. Do it, man. Do it. I've got an article on our website, Familiar Waters, of a guy I met on a plane. He was a friend of a really good friend, or a brother, excuse me, of a really good friend. And he was coming back from the Dean and the Babine and the Skeena and that whole system up in the BC fishing for steelhead. Okay, and he is a big time fisherman. But all he wants to do is swing flies. All he wants to do is swing flies. And I'm like, and I told him, I'm like, I like catching fish. So like you can swing all you want. I just like catching. He's like, oh, I'll catch as many fish as you do swinging. And I'm like, no, you won't. And he's like, oh, yes, I will. I'll catch as many fish as you do. I'm like, all right, well, we'll have to test that out sometime. Like, we agreed to be nice to each other, and we got off the plane, we went away. And so anyway, I'm drifting down the Trinity one day, and there he is.
Oh, really?
And he's like, hey,
Small
Mike.
world.
Yeah, he goes, hey, Mike. And I used to get recognized on the rivers all the time when I was doing my shows.
Okay.
And I kind of look up, I'm like, hey, how you doing? And he goes, hey, it's Craig. I'm like, hey, Craig, how are you, man? Good to see you. And he was swinging flies in one of my favorite holes on the entire river. And I mean, I know the fish by name that live in this thing. I know exactly where they're going to sit. I know exactly what's going on. And so he's like, oh, yeah, come on and fish there. I'm like, no, this is your hole. You do your thing, whatever. And little jab, I'm like, you guys are swinging anyway, so I'm not worried about it. And he's like, oh, he's with another guy up there who guides a lot of the swing guys. So anyway, so I'm like, we're just going to sit here and eat lunch, and I'm going to watch you fish. So we break out the sandwiches, and we're watching him fish, and him and his buddy, I mean, really good technical fishermen. These guys were really good.
I mean, are they using shooting lines or center pinning?
Shooting lines, the whole 9 yards, deep swing, spay, fly. I mean, they are dialed into the techniques. And they run the whole run. He's like, oh, go ahead and fish. I'm like, no, go ahead, man. Just do your thing. They walk back up the top. They run the whole run again. And I'm like, all right, we're going to get out of here. We'll see you. It's been fun watching you. He's like, fish it out. I'm like, no. He's like, you're throwing that bobber and bait thing anyway, so you're not gonna catch anything or make some smart ass remark. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, you sure? And he goes, yeah. And I had actually been rowing to that point for my buddy.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, you're on the oars. Like, now that's a challenge to talk about competition. Like, that's a challenge. So I grab it. I go, one drift through. Okay, that was clean. Good. Here we go. Boom. Drift through. Smoke one. Oh, look at that. Hey, how about that? Oh, beautiful. Oh, got lucky. You must have just moved in. Right. Met him, put him in a boat. I'm like, all right, you guys have a great day. He's like, no, finish it. I'm like, no. He's like, no, finish it. I'm like, okay. We drift out. I go, boom, stick one on the back end of the pool, and we ride that fish out of the hole. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
See you guys. You guys have a great day.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So my take is this. Hey, he was making it harder on himself, right? Just if you want pure Euro nymph, you're making it harder on yourself, like pure Euro nymph, without adding weight.
Which I do personally.
Yeah.
I carry 10-split shot.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not competing.
They're on the bottom, right? There's no rules against you using it, so do it. But my point is, do what floats your boat, man. Whatever makes you enjoy the sport, because the more we enjoy it, the more we're going to give back to it, the more we're going to share it with other people, the more we're going to improve it for everybody. Right. And that's what I'm about. As long as it's ethical, if you're having fun, do it.
I agree. Go back to the YouTube thing and all the fun comments you can get. When I replaced my Rook and Rod that I broke at Pewta, and then I got a Sage R8, the latest and greatest from them, and it's amazing. But I put a mono rig on it, which is kind of like a compromise between a fly line and tight lining Euro style. I can still do fly line style loops with it. Yeah. You can even cast a dry fly with it. It's just maybe not more than like 25 feet.
Right.
But my point was, I did that, and someone's all, you put that cheap crap mono on that beautiful rod. I mean, that's not even fly fishing. I'm like, come on, guys. Yeah. So, what do you call it? Whatever you want. I don't care.
So fly fishing is not what it is to me, and it's not what it is to you. It's what it is to the angler, whoever's doing it. Love it. I started out. I learned how to fly fish with a 6-foot Daiwa spinning rod, casting salmon eggs under a bobber and drifting it.
Like a water bobber?
No, like a bobber, like a red and white Uncle Zeke's bobber, like a bobber on Rush Creek, casting it out there, drifting it down, watching fish take it. I'm like, oh.
So fun.
They take it when it's natural. I read somewhere that they wanted stuff drifting natural. I'm a 9-year-old kid. I'm like, well, we got salmon eggs. I can drift those like they're natural, and threw them on a hook under a bobber. They ate them, and catch and release wasn't a thing back then. So I'd come home with a limited stock trout. That's how I learned how to fly fish. And it wasn't even with the fly rod.
Right.
But I learned the techniques of dead drift and getting things moving along. So that's like whatever gets you going, whatever gets the juices flowing, that's what you should be doing.
I agree. So with your show, it was on TV, now it's going to YouTube. We talked about how YouTube is kind of this big, huge, wide open world that kind of knocks down all the barriers. Are you done with TV, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm not going back to TV. Like, there's too many barriers. There's too many walls, right, in TV and things. It's you cannot create the way that you want to create per se. For instance, I wanted to do fly fishing. They wanted hunting. I ended up going to hunting. And I love hunting. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. I had a great relationship with Ruger, who's one of the best companies of all time in outdoors, maybe in general, just fantastic human beings. Just love them. So, I built great relationships there. I love hunting. I love doing it. There's a peacefulness. There's a calm. There's something for my soul when I fly fish. And hunting doesn't have that for me. Like when there's just a rhythm to fly fishing that I really, really dig. And it's like that when I'm in that fly fishing mode, when I'm either standing on the deck of a flats boat, looking for tarpon, or, I'm up fishing the Beaverhead or the Madison or, the Blackfoot, or up in Montana, like there's just something to there that soothes my soul. It makes me a happier person. And so I love that about fly fishing. And I try to live it. I've got a tattoo of a steelhead across my left bicep, and I've got a tattoo of a tarpon across my left tricep, because those are my spirit fish, right? And so I'm dialed into it, and it's part of what I do, just like football is, because that's what I did forever. Fly fishing is part of what I do. That's
so cool. Fingers, you keep saying I have ADD.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's cool. Why box yourself in? I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it takes a little time away, right? So I'm never gonna become, an ultra millionaire at any of them because I don't focus on them long enough. But that's not my jam either, right? Like my jam, for me as a person, like some of these people are so driven that they have to be like super rich. My jam is to enjoy your life. I don't want to worry about money. Like I don't want to struggle with it. Sure. I don't want to do any of that. But if I got enough to where I can enjoy life, give back to other people, enjoy my wife, who's phenomenal, loves to fly fish. Like
so cool. Mine too.
Yeah, enjoy the family. Like if I can do that, winner, I win. That's it. Game over, right? I won. And so that's my take on it. I don't need to be filthy rich. And I know people, some of my teammates and my good friends need to be filthy rich. Okay, do it, man. That's your jam.
For sure.
I want to help other people. I want to give back, right? I want to provide service to other people to help them learn to maybe balance their life a little bit with fly fishing or football or whatever it is. And I love teaching kids because like they're still a blank slate. And there's a lot of really good things that we can teach kids through sports, through fly fishing, all that. And so I love having the ability to do that.
So back to the show and the format. So like the TV is very restricting, and so like you got commercial breaks, you got a time for, and all the formats. Right. And with YouTube, so you want it, you're going all on YouTube. So what's your plans for the future with that?
So it's not just YouTube. So we've got YouTube, we've got fwfishing.com, which is our website as well. And so we do a bunch of blogging on there as well. I know a lot of people like to read, a lot of people kind of like to do that. And so, like, to go deep in a lot of the teaching stuff, we got articles up there about how to nymph and indicator fish, how to, what you're looking for in dry flies, talking about, all the different rivers, the best rivers that you want to fish if you want to fish Montana. Like, we've got a bunch of content up there as well, because I love to write, oddly enough.
Cool.
I started writing while I was playing, and so I love to write, I love to create. That was always my bent. I'm a creative. And so I do those blogs, we get them out when we can, and there's a lot of good knowledge up there. So that's part of it. The YouTube is part of it, right? Eventually, this stuff will lead to some social stuff. But what I really want to do is get back to what I was talking about with the coaching is I want to teach. And so we're going to have some opportunities for people to learn, how to cast a fly rod, how to really dial into nymph and indicator fishing, how to row a drift boat.
I'd like to learn.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like once you learn, it opens up the world of fishing to you. There are some rivers that you just can't fish, especially in Wyoming, where, property rights are the bottom of the river. You own the mud under the water.
Right.
And so if you can't drift it, like you can't get on it.
Okay.
And so things like that are really useful. And so we're gonna do that. We're gonna put out some digital products that people can learn from, and then some location specific stuff that people really gonna like.
Awesome.
And we're gonna keep producing content on YouTube. We've got so much back content.
Well, you said 15 years.
15 years of fly fishing footage.
And you're smartly splitting your whole episodes up into more than one YouTube video.
Oh yeah, it would be too much.
Right.
Like, that's the thing about what I hated about TV is I had to make every single episode 21:15 on the nose, 4 spots for black. Had to have a tease, had to have a bump, had to have a tailer. Like it's so formulaic. It has to be the same thing that you miss some of the really fantastic moments because you can't fit them into that 21:15. And of that 21:15, 4 or 5 minutes of that is doing business. It's sponsors, it's graphics, it's logos, it's like it's all kinds of stuff that you have to do contractually.
Don't really think about from a viewer point of view.
Right, and the viewer, you're getting 15 minutes for every 20-minute show. It's like, come on. And so, but I like YouTube. I can do whatever I want at any length I want, and I can teach whatever I want. I couldn't do the teaching in the show.
Oh, really?
Didn't have time
the
for it.
producers didn't want it, or?
No, you didn't have time for it. Otherwise, you're just teaching. Because if you really want to teach it in depth and talk about it, like it's going to take 3 to 5 minutes. That's valuable real estate, man. That's 20% of the show. And so when you build a show, you've got to build the overall story arc, right? And the sub arcs within each one to get through each segment to lead back to the overall story arc that you're building out, like conflict points and everything else that you got to think about when you're doing it.
Well,
like,
I know, but still, I think all those formulas, though, I think they will help when.
Oh, they can't go away. You have to have them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the average YouTuber, myself included, don't even think about it at that level.
Right.
You know, you're just kind of recording what happens, and then you're trying to make a story about it later. Where that's kind of what you have to do too, but you have to find those arcs within the day of just fishing.
Right. What makes this interesting?
Right, and that's not always easy.
No, it is not.
I mean, last year I filmed a bike race. Have you ever heard of RAM, Race Across America?
Yeah.
They start in San Diego and in Annapolis. I was supposed to do it this year, but there were some problems with the bus.
Yeah.
They canceled it on last minute, so they had no room for me. And I'm like, how can I do this sleeping in a van?
Right.
Driving across the country. I'm not going to be able to be creative. But anyway, last year we did that, and it's just like you said. It's like I had to find those stories within a story. I mean, whether it be somebody crashing on the corner of a street, to get some rest because they had no time to sleep, or it's not like a set of a TV show where you got a plot.
It's all scripted.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's all scripted. A writer had a big plan for the whole season, and
well, let you guys in on a little secret. Most of the reality TV is actually scripted too. So not to break anybody's bubble, but a lot of that stuff is all written out. Like, here's what's going to happen today.
I mean, maybe the competitions are. Well, even then they might. I don't know. You're right.
Yeah, you cannot create that much drama in real life, like without writing it.
I will say, my family, we did a vacation at an Airbnb on the coast whatever it was, recently. And for fun, we had Family Survivor. So we had these competitions throughout the week.
Nice.
It was horrible. We fought, we were lying, we were backstabbing.
Yep.
It was miserable. We never did it again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes the format or whatever the premise of the show is could sort of draw that.
Can create
out.
it, yeah.
It was funny. My wife lied bold-faced from my face.
That's awesome.
It was great, but
That's awesome.
It did kind of suck.
It's a good memory. Yeah, no, it sucks, but it's like you could always draw on that, which is cool.
For sure. But, well, that's interesting. The TV show, I mean, like I said, that 21-minute mark, I would feel very crippled by trying to either fill it out. I mean, you mentioned, like, if you're off camera, that if it was a day it was tough to catch the fish, I mean, how did you make a show out of that? You got all this money invested in the cruise and getting there and traveling, and
that's it. And that's what you're always thinking about. So it's, if you do it enough, you do it all the time. I was doing 26 episodes a year. Wow. So you figure every episode is 3 to 4 days filming and 2 weeks of editing.
Okay.
So you're now looking at over 365 days.
Right.
Over 52 weeks of shows to get it done. And clearly I had a staff that would help and do all that. That's a lot of travel. I was gone half the year. And so as much as I love fly fishing, there was a business built around it. And you kind of motivation, your like verve to go on a trip. Sometimes you're like, oh, I've got to go.
Turned into work.
I've got to go to Key West. Like,
damn it.
Who says that, right? And so, it can get on you. So I've had a little break, which is awesome. And now I continue to go over and go fly fish when I can. Just had a shoulder surgery, so I'm trying to recover from that. I've got
Cast left-handed. Come on.
well, I can't strip.
Oh,
right.
true.
And so that's the deal. I've done it before. I had my rotator cuff done before, and as soon as I got back, I would cast left-handed, no problem.
Okay.
But I've got to wait. I'm still only 3 weeks
I don't think
out.
I could do that.
Yeah, 6 weeks.
I would be totally flopping it everywhere.
At first, I was awful. Yeah. But it's a great tool because now, if you got casts that
Sure.
you can't make because you can't reach
An
out.
offside, yeah, 100%.
It's an awesome tool to have.
Well, speaking of teaching, I think you've got it posted. You might have more than one tutorial, but you have a video of just demonstrating how to cast, just how to make those loops, and you compare it to as an athletic movement. And I've never heard anyone communicate it that way, and I found it very eye-opening. I mean, I'm okay caster, but those kind of tips help a lot.
Yeah, well, so I try to translate everything into athletic movements because that's what we're doing, right? If when we're casting, the whole concept of it is how do I transfer energy? Same thing for throwing a football. How do I transfer energy? Same thing for hitting a golf ball. Same thing for hitting a baseball. Like all of this is about how do I harness and transfer energy? And so fly casting is no different, except that you have a rod that's going to help you do this. And so I try to teach the most efficient way of anything, right? Is the easiest, the cleanest, simplest, the least amount of steps. So how do you do it? Fly casting's super simple, right? Get tight to your line, speed up until you're going your fastest right before you stop. And you have to come to a complete stop, right? And so as I come forward, what do I do again? Well, same thing. Come tight first, slow start, fast finish, stop. And send it out there. Like, it's simple, it's efficient. And once you understand, like I said, the basics of it, now you can graduate and get on and get better at it. But it's an issue of just learning the basics first so that you can become better. And that's how I like to teach it. I try to teach my quarterbacks to become the most efficient quarterback they can be is by doing simple things. Same thing for fly fishing. If I'm going to teach you how to fly fish, I'm going to teach you the easiest way to do something, the simplest way to do something. And then we'll get
build on that.
profoundly detailed later. But we'll start in here's the simplest way to do it.
I think for me, it wasn't until I started making fishing videos that I could see myself on camera and see what I was doing wrong. Because I think when you're casting, I mean, it's hard to see the loop behind you because it's not a position you can really be in. I mean, you can kind of cast across yourself instead of.
But then it changes your stroke too, right?
True.
If I open myself up and I'm looking back, whoa! Now it makes me go backwards with it.
Right.
And so it changes what you do in terms of your cast. The iPhone is amazing because it has a slow-mo setting on there.
That too.
And you can literally set it on a tripod and watch all of your mechanical flaws in real life. I've still got a bunch of mechanical flaws in my cast, like we all do. And I'm not that guy who needs to be so dialed in that everything has to be perfect every cast. I just want mine to be functional. And so I've got, I do the whole Bahamian sweep where I bring it out and round to the side and then over the top. And because, forever I've thrown nymph and indicator with split shot. So it's a chuck and duck. And then I'm throwing big ass streamers. I'm throwing tarpon flies. Like, I don't want to hit anybody with those things. My guide down in the Everglades told a story about a guy that caught himself right in the private parts, and they had to literally hella lift him.
Hopefully barbless.
No, it's a tarpon fly. Okay. So they had to literally put him on a helicopter off his boat and fly him to Miami.
Was he bleeding?
Yeah, he was literally blood down the entire front. And so, I don't want to do that.
I need sympathy pain right now.
Right, exactly. So I want to cast safely too, and so I've got mechanical issues, but if you teach it efficiently, you get good at it, and you train yourself on what you do, go do it, right?
For sure. Well, I'm glad there's people like you that love to teach. A lot of people ask me questions, and I haven't really gone specifically into a tutorial realm yet, but it's definitely something I want to venture into. Maybe it's a confidence issue. I've only been doing this for 2.5 years now, fly fishing. I've fished conventional before, but I feel like I need to learn more before I can start teaching. But I need to sort of step back and realize there are some basic fundamentals I know pretty well that I think I can still teach.
Without a doubt, you could easily teach somebody just starting off, getting going, and you have the recent experience of it, which helps, right? That's one of the things for coaches is that we always forget what it's like to start.
Yeah.
And so, it's hard to get there. My take on it is this, and I always have my quarterbacks lead meetings because you never learn something like you do until you teach it.
That's true.
And you realize, ooh, I don't know that. I need to figure this out. Ooh, I don't know that. Why is this happening? And so you start all these questions that come up that you want to teach to kids or to, anglers or whoever, all of a sudden start to appear when you start to teach. And so it's one way to get a lot better at fly fishing is to teach, right? Or fly tying, teach, whatever, teach it and watch how quickly you get better.
For sure. You got steelhead and tarpon. Where are your moments to start steelhead? What's your favorite steelhead river?
Well, that's a good question.
Your favorite kid,
Yeah, I mean,
if you could go anywhere tomorrow.
So most of my fishing for steelhead has been California.
Okay.
Right, but I go all the way up and down the coast here. You everywhere from starting at the Trinity, heading up to, the Eel and all the Metolius and all that stuff, heading up that way, going out on the coast of Oregon, right, up into Washington, the O, and all those rivers running through there. I absolutely love it. And so my favorite steelhead river, not to pin it down on any one river, is the one that has the fish in it at that moment. Because they'll always be different, right? It's about finding the fish. I love the Trinity. It's a local river. I mean, it feels so quaint when you fish it. Like it's small, it's beautiful. It can be really generous and it can be an absolute bitch. And so I just like that about it. We fished the South Fork of the Eel, which also feels very quaint and very nice, and it's a great river. The Klamath used to be off the chain during steelhead season. You could easily have a 10-fish day there consistently.
That would be amazing.
Amazing. And so that was...
Well, maybe in the future when those dams come out.
Well...
You don't think that'll change back?
No. I think... Here's where I stand on dams. A lot of people at home, who are just purists about dams, same thing. Dams have given us a lot of really good fishing. There's a lot of really good fishing behind dams. I don't like the concept of it. Like I said, I did a water documentary in California. And so what they've done to our natural systems has really screwed up a lot of steelhead, anadromous fish, salmon, all that stuff. But it's given us some incredible trout fishing in a lot of rivers. And so I'm hit and miss on dams.
For sure.
The Beaverhead River would be a muddy hole. That's what Lewis and Clark went over the summer. Went over the top end to find the drainage to the Columbia. And so it would be a muddy hole. It wouldn't be a trout fishery at all.
Okay.
If it weren't for dams. The same can be said for Lee's Ferry down on the Colorado River. The same can be said for the Animas down in Colorado. All of these are dam-controlled rivers.
Right.
The Lower Sac. They're all dam-controlled rivers. And so we get a lot of great year-round fishing in tailwaters. It also screws up the anadromous fish.
Right. And
that's where the rub is, right? It screws up the anadromous fish, which would be a lot more hit and miss. It would be a lot more seasonal, a lot tougher. It'd be like Oregon's coastal rivers.
Right.
And so...
I thought with the Klamath, it was a little more unique there because some of those reservoirs are just like algae blooms. They're not.
Yeah,
they're not.
Klamath Falls is
the water.
It's a bug hatchery.
And the parasites that are, growing in that water that's actually damaging, or it's not even safe to swim in some of them.
Yeah, it's that river's got its own issues because there's so much nitrogen going into that thing from all the farming. And it's a super shallow dish up there, and so
with the top.
Yeah, the top.
In
Yeah,
Falls.
and so so I totally get it. That said, fishing on the Williamson with all those huge trout coming out of Klamath Falls when it gets warm in there can be unbelievable. I've caught 20+ inch fish with regularity on that river.
That's so cool. If you time it right.
Yeah, it has to be absolutely timed right. Because of the dam below it, right? So I don't want to take a stand on either way of it, but I just I always go back and forth and I try to look at both sides.
I admire you for doing that because it's so easy to get dogma about one way or the other. I mean, it's looking up the coast though at the steelhead numbers and the salmon returns, it's not pretty for them. So
it's not, but it's also a lot of what we're doing, right? It's water management. It's how we're putting it. That's where the water documentary comes in. It's the water that we're spending.
Is that out yet, by the way?
Oh, it's been out. It was out for years. It's the water that we're spending on agriculture, because that's really where it is. In California, we get 29.2 million acre feet of water a year. Period. That's what we get on our average rainfall. But we've allotted 42 million acre feet of water.
Huh.
How is that possible?
Is that counted for storage or something?
No, they just give it out as a political favor to all these. Farmers get it, and I don't have anything against farmers except for the fact that they're not buying it at market value because they have co-ops that. If everybody owes 960 acres, they get subsidized water. And so the number one energy user in California is our water system, pumping water back uphill into the valley out of the delta.
Okay.
That's the number one energy user. Now we're taking all this water and we're putting it on farms for farmers who then take that money. It's private. It's their money, right? $2 billion in farming a year out of some of these places. Westlands in particular has, I want to say it's 600,000 at the time I did the documentary, 600,000 acre feet or 600,000 acres under contract for water. They each get 2 acre feet of water per year. It's 1.2 million acre feet of water right there just for Westlands. And their initial contracts said that they had to grow row crops, tomatoes, whatever else that you could fallow. Well, it's all trees now. It's all nuts and fruit, and they can't fallow it.
Okay.
And then what happens is these guys, when they decide that they've salted their lands enough by putting too much water on it, they sell their water rights downstream to developers in desert areas of Southern California, which is all good and fine, but you can't fallow a house. You can't let that go. So once that stuff is dedicated downstream, they have to continue providing the water for that. And the contractors have to have those water rights in place to build.
Huh.
And so it's this big political deal where there's a lot of payola, a lot of guys getting paid off. Oh, there it is, period.
I believe it.
I had the water director of the Water Resources Board literally tell me that California's water doesn't belong to California's citizens. It belongs to the water users, which are the farmers.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear about cutbacks and residential usage, I mean, that's a small percentage of the overall, right? It's like less than 20%.
It's like 19%. It's like 18%. Okay. It's like oxygen, right? It's like 19% of it goes to residential stuff. Residential and industrial, period.
Okay, so the rest is ag.
The other 80% of developed water. So here's where they kind of get off in their thing. They're like, we use less than 40% of water. No, you use 40% of total water, 49% of total water, but you use 80% of the developed water. And part of that is also evaporation in the because we have a horribly antiquated aqueduct. And then they're trying to build the channel that goes around the bay now to take the freshest water out to go right to the farmer. Like, there's all kinds of horribleness. If you ever want to look into it, like if you ever want to know about water policy, anybody at home, not to belabor this point, go read Cadillac Desert.
Well, this affects us directly. As fishermen. So
the title of my documentary was California King Sold Down the River.
Okay. Just to tie back to my own stretch of the upper or lower Sac near Redding, I know just recently they've had to affect the flows coming out of the dam because they need to store that water for basically ag later down the road. And so,
and guess who owns all the land so that they could build the dam higher when it comes? Westlands Water District.
Yeah.
They bought it just so that they could do that.
Okay.
I mean, like, there's a lot of planning and a lot of money on that side.
I'm sure. Well, 'cause that's a pretty major reservoir for the whole system, right? Shasta.
It's the reservoir. 70 some odd percent of the water comes out of Shasta.
Okay.
Like, it's crazy because you got all those major rivers feeding into it. And, the San Joaquin, I want to say the San Joaquin gives like 17% or something to it. Okay. So, but not a lot. It goes dry at points.
Okay.
It's like it's coming off of northern California and coming over, and plus what they're pumping over from the Trinity. Right. So there's a lot of stuff that there's a lot of water usage that's like people understand. If you just peel back one page,
right,
you see all the politics that play into it. It's awful.
Well, sure. And the management affects the salmon run locally because like the fish, they might spawn naturally, but then they'll drop the flows. And so all those reds are exposed to the air.
Right.
They all die. Or just recently they had to, because they can control the depth of the lake from where they draw the river from to control the water temp for the salmon. So they had to, I don't remember exactly what they changed, but basically they rose the temperature of the river, killing all the salmon smolt. Like 100,000 salmon smolt got killed because they had to raise the temp, having to do with trying to preserve the water temp for later in the season. It's just, like you said, it's all politics. It's not, I mean, there's more than one, a lot of players that are all fighting for that water, and the fish don't always get the first call.
Fish never get a stake in it. Never. That's what you need to realize. The fish never, ever get a stake in it. When you talk to farmers in the Central Valley, and again, I like these people, so I'm not, like, it's not a bash on farmers. I get it. It's their living, and most of them have been born into this. So it's not like they know anything else. But they will literally tell you that we're wasting all that water, sending it out the mouth of the Golden Gate Bridge. We're wasting water, letting nature run the way it ran forever. By the way, we're cutting it in less than half to let that happen. Like, that's not wasting water. Like, we're growing fish if we do it right.
It's all connected too.
It's all connected.
Those ecosystems are all connected.
And that water flow, whatever's going out, is also creating like good ocean environment for fish to live, and that's a huge piece of it too. Like, there's a lot that we have no concept about, but it's it starts with water, and it starts with water coming out of our river.
I think that's just one of the basic things: clean air, clean water. I mean, yeah, I agree. Let's go back to the second half of my question with the tarpon. What is your favorite place to go fish for tarpon?
Tarpon being like really, tarpon and steelhead, yes, but tarpon are really my spirit fish. So I absolutely dig tarpon. And there's a bunch of different ways that you fish them. If we're talking about fishing for big adults in the flats, Key West, period.
Okay.
Love it. I love Key West. It's just awesome. But the fishing experience down there, the guides are really good. They're really on it. The town itself, the environment, but the competition, like finding the fish, like it's all right. It's all right. If you like hunting adults in the flat. If you just want to catch big adults and lots of them, then east of Holbox, Mexico. Awesome.
That's a numbers game there.
You're seeing, there's a couple of videos up on our site right now, up on YouTube right now for us. Like you're seeing packs of tarpon, huge tarpon roll along.
Wow.
And they have some massive fish. The average fish down there like is going to go 60 to 100 somewhere.
I was just going to ask, 'cause I've never seen one in person.
Yeah, they're going to go 60 to 100 in Holbox for the adults. But they do have big ass hens that are down there. And the biggest tarpon I have ever held boat side in my life was down east of Holbox, Mexico. And it taped out would be about a 175 pounder on a 10 weight.
Oh my gosh.
And
how long was that fight?
42 minutes.
Okay.
Once you learn how to fight them, there's a...
Just think of the lactic acid.
Oh, dude,
my hands going numb.
It was brutal. Like, it hurt. But once you figure out how to fight them, you can put it on them pretty good, just like anything else.
Okay.
But 42 minutes, I was pretty proud of that. But one of the greatest shots ever, and it became our thumbnail pick, was this tarpon jumping, and the story for this is great.
Okay.
So I'm fighting this fish. It's awesome. I know what it's like. Like, it jumps once. I'm like, oh, like this is a baller. This fish is awesome.
Yeah.
And so I'm with my buddy, and this is not even for a show. We're not shooting a show. I went down there and shot a show. I'm like, I'm just going back to fish. My guy Sanfley, who's the guide down here, like he's the guide, he's the English teacher, he was like the mayor of Holbox. Like he's awesome. One of my favorite fishing people in the world. I'm like, just taking my buddy down and we're gonna go fish. So we fish, we get out there, my buddy tries to cast this fish, and Sanfley's like, no, you'll give up the pole. Mike Pawlaski, you fish. And so like cast and make the cast, smoke this fish, right? It jumps. Holy crap, this thing's massive. And so I'm fighting it. The sun's just coming up over the eastern horizon, like perfect. Glass calm water. This is the quintessential picture of tarpon fishing in my mind. And then all of a sudden, we get a flock of rosette spoonbills flying from right to left, and the tarpon coming at the sun, and the spoonbills are like halfway between us and the tarpon, and this tarpon literally jumps into the sun as the spoonbills fly beneath him. And it's this tarpon hanging in the sun with these rosette spoonbills beneath it I'm like, this is the ultimate picture. And I look back, the guy who does fly fishing television doesn't have a camera rolling anywhere.
Oh my gosh.
And I look at my buddy who's sitting behind me, I'm like, get the camera out, what the hell? So he pulls out the camera and he starts snapping pictures, and this tarpon jumps again. And it's not in the sun, the sun's just off to the left. But it's me bowing to the king, reaching out, and the tarpon's up, and it's like 60 yards off, and you can see how massive this fish is. And it's just a moment that's frozen in time in my head. And so I love Holbox. Holbox is phenomenal. And then when you're done fishing for adults, you can go back in the lagoons and fish for babies all day long.
Okay.
And it is awesome, because it's like so much fun. It's one of those things that you just laugh, and you see them everywhere, and you can cast, and you can figure out what you're doing wrong. So anybody trying to figure out saltwater fishing for the first time, it's a great way to do it.
Okay.
It's fishing a baby tarpon, figure out what triggers fish to eat, what doesn't, like patterns, flies, colors, clarity, turbidity, like all those things tie in together. There's no stress to it because there's a baby tarpon, right? And you've already done your morning fishing for the adults. And they'll accommodate. You can throw a jig out there at the adults. You can do whatever you want.
Why does it change in the morning?
Windier.
Okay.
So it starts to get windy offshore. You're fishing in like 25 feet of water. So it's not this flat fishing that you're used to. But the wind kicks up, you come into the backcountry and you go fish for babies, and it's all good. Okay. So that's awesome.
And so the adults stay out in the main channels, and
they're out offside. They're out offside, kind of doing their mating dance, right? Waiting for that full moon so they can go out and breed, and then the babies are inside. And babies go up to like 30 pounds.
That's not small.
That's not a small fish. They're great fish to catch. So it's pretty awesome. I love it there. And then I cut my teeth on fly fishing for tarpon in Tampa, and so it's always got a place in my heart. But in terms of and they get a ton of fish. They can be difficult. There's always a bunch of boats, and there's a lot of, it's Tampa Bay. There's a lot of people trying to fish for them. But it can be great fishing. And one of the biggest fish I ever hooked was down there in Tampa too. So
right on.
Dudes are chasing records all the time off the shores of Tampa Bay. So it's a great place to fish.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I just got to go to Florida for the first time I didn't get to do anything fun. We were outside of Orlando. It was for that bike race team, but I need to go fishing.
If you're going to Florida to go fish and you get the chance, go to the Everglades first. Period.
Okay.
Everglades is a special place, man. It's awesome. And there's some really good guides down there. I'm happy to recommend one if he's even still guiding. But so call me.
We'll talk.
Yeah, I'll put you in contact with the guy's phenomenal. And he's in my show, so anybody who wants to see it on YouTube, they'll see who I'm fishing with.
Perfect.
But it's like there's nothing like the Everglades. It's just so wild. It's just so cool. Like, and I talk about that rhythm, right? There's a hum that when we live in life, that you always have an electrical hum that you never even realize. Anytime you're in the city, it's why when you go out in the silence, it's deafening. When you go camping and you're out there all by yourself, like there's no electrical hum. Whoa, what's that? In the Everglades, you get away from that. The electrical hum is gone, and it's wild. And you've got osprey doing their thing, and you've got tarpon rolling. It's just the Everglades is a special place, and it's great for tarpon. You can catch snook. You can catch it's a saltwater smorgasbord, and it's a great place to fish. And so I love that as well. So the place that I'm fishing right now is always my favorite place.
Love that attitude.
But there are some special places that you need to go check out. The Everglades, Key West, East of Holbox for poons, definitely it. Montana, if you are a fly fisherman who wants to catch trout and you don't travel to Montana, then you are missing out. Like, Montana is special. It's just special. Idaho's great. It's got some. Wyoming's great. There's some really good fishing in Wyoming. Utah has a couple places, but there ain't no place in the lower 48 like Montana, period. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I think that's a good place to end on. Totally can relate to so much of what you say. And even though I haven't experienced them firsthand, I mean, you definitely want to come and check out his channel, because it's like, this is pro level content, and you just started releasing there, so you don't have very many subs.
Yeah.
That's you're kind of projecting the abyss right now, but we definitely need to get that changed. And what's the best place to find you?
On YouTube, Familiar Waters. You'll see it there. That's a great place to start. It'll take you to our website, fwfishing.com. You can catch us there. Social media will be kicking off, as you know. There's so many things to do all the time to get this stuff done. And so just building out another brand, kind of getting it up and going, but you just got to have a love for it, just like anything else. Keep doing it and getting stuff out. Just getting over the surgery. We'll be having more stuff out. I've got second part of my Henry's Fork show. It's about to go up, and then I've got an unbelievable cast on a dry fly on the beaverhead for a 21.5-inch trout coming up here really quickly too. So it was an impossible cast. It took us an hour and a half for one fish that I stayed on him to make the cast, and that's coming up here soon. So I love showing that stuff. I can't show the reality of that in TV. I can do it on YouTube.
That's so cool. Well, definitely check it out. And thanks so much for hosting me here in your own home. We got to connect to do this podcast, and hopefully again in the future. Maybe on the river.
Anytime you need it, I'd love to. We need to get out and fish together.
100%.
And I appreciate you having me on, brother. Love your stuff. Keep working hard on your stuff too, because it's awesome.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.
This is the Driftstone Podcast. Visit driftstone.co to find fly tying tutorials and the recipes. Most of the materials used in the patterns are available in the shop, and if you don't tie yet, and would rather buy them, you can find flies hand-tied by me as well. Your support literally enables me to keep producing new content here and on YouTube, so please subscribe to catch it all. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the water. Until next time, everyone, Godspeed.